I still remember that night. The sound of rain slamming against the window while my father's voice echoed down the hallway. He didn't even look at me when he said it. "You'll have to find somewhere else to stay." Just like that. No emotion, no explanation, just finality. My mother stood beside him, her eyes glassy but silent, like she'd rehearsed this moment. All because my sister wanted my room. I left with a single duffel bag and the taste of betrayal burning in my throat. For years I wondered how love could turn into exile so easily. But time changes everything. And 10 years later, when I saw that same house listed for sale, I didn't hesitate. I bought it without a word. This time, I held the keys, and I knew exactly what I was going to do. Would you ever go back to the place that broke you? Could forgiveness ever feel as satisfying as revenge? And when justice finally comes, does it heal, or just reopen the wound? The first night after being thrown out was the coldest I'd ever known. I slept beneath a flickering streetlight behind the old grocery store, the sound of thunder fading into silence. Every raindrop felt like a reminder, not just of what I'd lost, but of how easily family can turn their back when love becomes inconvenient. I replayed their words over and over, trying to find a crack of reason that made sense. But there wasn't any. Just betrayal wearing the face of the people I trusted most. I told myself I'd never go back. Never give them the satisfaction of seeing me broken. But even then, lying on that wet pavement, something inside me whispered, "One day, they'll remember what they did." The days that followed blurred together, wandering between bus stops, sleeping in corners the city forgot. I called once, hoping they'd answer, hoping someone would say it was a mistake. But when my sister picked up, her laughter cut through the line like glass. "Enjoy your new home," she said, and hung up. That was the last time I heard her voice for years. I learned how to survive, not because I wanted to, but because I refused to let them be right about me. Every odd job, every sleepless night, it was all fuel. I wasn't just surviving anymore. I was building a promise. I'd come back stronger than they could ever imagine. Years later, when life finally began to change, I almost forgot what it felt like to be unwanted. I worked harder than anyone, saved every dollar, and built something of my own. But success doesn't erase the ache. It just gives it a quieter place to live. I thought I'd buried the past until the day I saw that listing online. Same house, same address. And there it was. The photo of my old room, painted a different color, but still mine in every corner. My hands trembled when I clicked purchase inquiry. Not from anger, but from the rush of fate coming full circle. When the papers were signed and the keys rested in my palm, I drove straight there. The neighborhood hadn't changed. Same cracked sidewalk, same trees bowing toward the street, but everything felt smaller now, like the ghosts had lost their power. I stood in front of that house for a long time, listening to the creak of the wind through the porch railings. It was strange coming home not as the broken boy they cast out, but as the man who now owned the very place that betrayed him. A decade ago, they told me there wasn't room for me here. Now every inch of it belonged to me. The first step inside felt like trespassing into a memory that refused to die. The air was thick with the scent of dust and old paint, everything exactly as it had been, frozen in time. I traced my fingers along the wall, feeling the faint grooves where I'd carved my initials years ago. The silence was deafening, almost alive, pressing against my chest like a heartbeat that didn't belong to me anymore. This house once rejected me. Now, it waited for my command. Every creak of the floorboards whispered of the night I left. But this time, I wasn't the one running. I was the one returning. I walked through each room like a ghost retracing its own footsteps. The kitchen still smelled faintly of my mother's cooking, though the counters were now chipped and stained. The hallway photos were gone. No trace of the family that once lived here, as if erasing me had erased them too. My sister's old laughter echoed faintly in my head. the kind that used to make the walls feel smaller. But now, standing there, I realized something. The power wasn't in revenge. It was in ownership. I didn't need to destroy what they built. Just standing in this house again was enough to rewrite the ending. I decided not to renovate. Not yet. Instead, I left everything as it was. Every crack, every mark, every silent reminder of the night they chose my sister over me. Then, one afternoon, I got a message from a local realtor. "Someone's asking about the property," she said. "A woman who claims she used to live there." I didn't need to ask who. I told her to set the appointment. For the first time in 10 years, they would step foot into the place they'd once forced me to leave. But this time I'd be waiting. The day they arrived, I watched their car pull into the driveway from behind the curtain. Same car, just older, like them. My father stepped out first, his hair whiter now, his gait slower. My mother followed, clutching her purse to her chest as if it could protect her from what she feared to see. When she looked up at the house, I saw something flicker in her eyes. Regret, maybe. My father just stared, cold and unreadable. I let them walk up the steps, their shoes echoing against the porch that once watched me leave. Then, I opened the door. They didn't recognize me at first. Not until I smiled. My mother gasped, hand flying to her mouth. My father froze, his lips parting as if words could undo the past. "Welcome home," I said softly, stepping aside to let them in. They hesitated, as though crossing the threshold would confirm that I'd become everything they feared I wouldn't. And maybe I had. But as they entered, I didn't feel anger anymore, just peace. I'd carried their betrayal long enough. Now, standing in the same house that once broke me, I realized something I never expected. Forgiveness doesn't always sound like mercy. Sometimes it sounds like ownership. We sat in silence for a long time, the kind that hums louder than words. My mother's eyes wandered over the walls, tracing old memories that no longer belonged to her. My father pretended to study the floorboards, but his jaw was locked tight, as if pride could still protect him. I offered them tea, the way strangers do when they're trying to be polite. That's what we were now, strangers sharing a past. My mother finally whispered, "You bought it." I nodded. Cash. The word landed between us like a confession. My father's hand twitched, but he said nothing. I didn't need to remind them what they'd done. The house itself was doing that for me. My mother's voice trembled as she said, "We didn't mean for things to go that way." Her words felt small. Too late, too late, I could have shouted. Could have asked why love had an expiration date when it came to me, but instead I just listened. She spoke about pressure, about how they couldn't afford to keep both kids comfortable back then, how they'd thought I'd manage on my own. "You were always the strong one," she said, as if that excused everything. My father finally looked up, eyes glassy. "We made a mistake, the kind of mistake that cost a son his family." I nodded slowly. "Yeah," I said quietly. "But you gave me something too. A reason to never need you again." Then came the knock on the door. Soft, hesitant, but familiar. My mother froze. My father's head turned sharply. I didn't need to ask who it was. I opened the door, and there she stood. My sister. She looked older, of course, but still carried that same confidence that once cost me everything. Her smile faltered when she saw me. "You?" she whispered. "You own this place." I nodded. "Surprised?" She glanced past me, seeing our parents sitting in silence, and something in her expression cracked. For the first time, she looked unsure, like maybe, just maybe, she realized what her comfort had cost. We gathered in the living room. The same 4 people, the same house, 10 years later. No shouting this time, no slammed doors, just the sound of breathing and memories hanging in the air. My sister tried to speak first, but her voice cracked. "I didn't know they'd really make you leave," she said. I believed her, or wanted to. I told her I forgave her, but not for her. For me, because carrying that pain any longer meant I was still living outside that house. I needed to step back not just physically, but emotionally. And maybe, in some small way, they needed to see that forgiveness doesn't erase the past. It just proves you survived it. Before they left, I handed my father the keys. His brows furrowed, confusion flickering in his eyes. "It's still yours?" he asked. I shook my head. "It's mine," I said. "But you can visit whenever you remember who I am." My mother cried softly, and my sister hugged me, the kind of hug that trembles with everything words can't fix. When they drove away, I stood on the porch, watching until their car disappeared around the corner. The house was silent again, but not empty. It finally felt like mine, not because I owned it, but because I'd reclaimed the piece of myself they once left behind. After they left, the silence felt different. Not heavy anymore, but peaceful. I walked through every room slowly, hearing echoes of laughter, arguments, and footsteps that belonged to a different lifetime. For years, this house symbolized rejection. Now, it felt like forgiveness built into the walls. I realized I didn't need revenge, or even their apology. What I needed was this stillness, proof that I could come back, stand in the same place that broke me and feel nothing but calm. It's strange how pain can age with you, how the sharp edges turn soft when you finally understand. The past wasn't my prison anymore. It had become my teacher. I spent the next few days cleaning the house. It was more than sweeping dust. It was erasing the ghosts. Each drawer I emptied, each window I opened, felt like exhaling something that had been trapped for too long. I found pieces of the past tucked away. My old report card, a broken toy car, a faded note with my name written in my mother's handwriting. I sat on the floor holding it, and for a moment that little boy who was thrown out felt seen again. I didn't cry. I just smiled. Healing, I learned, doesn't always look like joy. Sometimes it's quiet acceptance, the sound of letting go. I decided not to sell the house. Instead, I turned it into something new. A small community home for kids who didn't have one. The irony wasn't lost on me. The house that once pushed me out would now pull others in. When the first group of children arrived, their laughter filled the halls that had been silent for too long. It felt like redemption, not for them, but for me. And maybe even for my parents, because this time no one would be told to leave. This time every room would mean welcome home. When my parents visited months later, they saw what I'd done. My mother stood in the hallway, tears falling silently, as the sound of children's laughter echoed upstairs. My father's voice broke when he said, "You made this." From that, I nodded. "From what you left me with," I said softly. He reached out then, not to shake hands, but to hold my shoulder. It wasn't forgiveness. It was acknowledgement. And maybe, for us, that was enough. Because in that moment, I realized I wasn't the boy they'd thrown out anymore. I was the man who had turned pain into purpose. That night, after everyone left, I sat alone on the porch. The air was cool, the stars steady above. I thought about the boy who once walked away in the rain, and realized I'd finally walked back for him. He deserved to come home. The pain, the years, the silence, it had all led here. The house that once took everything from me had become the place where I found everything again. Sometimes life circles back, not to remind you of what broke you, but to show you how far you've come since. The weeks turned into months, and the house that once echoed with anger now sang with laughter. I'd never imagined that rebuilding it would rebuild me too. Every morning, I woke up to the sound of kids racing down the hallway, arguing about breakfast or cartoons, a noise that somehow filled every empty space inside me. My parents visited often now, not as owners, not even as guests, but as people trying to make things right in the only way they knew how. I didn't stop them. The truth was, I needed them to see what forgiveness looked like in motion. Not spoken, but lived. My sister started volunteering after work, reading stories to the kids, teaching them art, staying late even when she didn't have to. The first few times, she couldn't look me in the eye. But one evening, as the sun melted over the porch, she finally said it. I was jealous of you back then. You were always stronger. I didn't reply, just smiled, because I'd already forgiven her long before she said it. Sometimes, the best closure isn't a conversation. It's the quiet understanding that no one leaves a family wound untouched. We just learn to stop picking at the scar. One night after the children had gone to bed, I found my father sitting on the porch, staring at the stars. He didn't look like the man who once told me to leave. He looked older, gentler, almost small beneath the night sky. You built something good here, he said softly. For a moment, I saw the father I'd wished for back then. The one who protected instead of punished. I sat beside him, and we didn't speak for a while. We didn't need to. Some apologies don't come in words. They come in presence, in the choice to stay when you could have walked away. My mother began leaving small gifts around the house, fresh flowers, framed photos, handwritten notes that said things like, "I'm proud of you." I used to crave those words. Now, they just made me smile, because the boy who once begged for their love didn't exist anymore. I'd grown into the kind of person who didn't need to be seen to know his worth. The house had given me that, not the bricks, not the walls, but what it represented. That no matter how far someone tries to push you away, you can always find your way back home, even if you have to rebuild it yourself. Looking back now, I realize it was never about the room or even the house. It was about belonging, something I had to lose to truly understand. My parents taught me what heartbreak feels like, but they also taught me how powerful it is to choose forgiveness over fury. The walls that once threw me out now stand as shelter for those who need one most. Maybe that's how healing really works. Not by changing the past, but by writing a better story in the same place it fell apart. And as I turn off the lights each night, I whisper a quiet truth to the boy I used to be. You made it home after all. It started small. A local journalist heard about the house that became a home again. She asked for an interview, and for the first time, I told my story out loud. Not the version full of anger or revenge, but the one filled with lessons. How pain can become purpose if you let it breathe. She listened quietly, eyes wide. And when she asked how it felt to forgive, I told her the truth. It doesn't feel like winning or losing. It just feels like peace. A week later, the story went online. By morning, it had reached thousands. I didn't expect that. But maybe people saw themselves in it. In the ache, the redemption, the simple hope that broken things can still be rebuilt. After the article went viral, people began reaching out. Messages from strangers who'd been disowned, betrayed, or forgotten by their families. They thanked me for reminding them that survival isn't shameful, and that forgiveness isn't weakness. Some even drove to the house, just to stand outside, to see that healing was real. I didn't have words for what that felt like. I had built this place to heal my own wounds, but somehow, it had started healing others too. And maybe that's what love really is. Something that grows back stronger when you give it away. One afternoon, I got a letter from a boy named Liam, 16, living in a shelter across town. He wrote, "Your story made me believe families can change. I want to meet you someday." I invited him over. When he arrived, nervous and unsure, I saw myself in him. The same quiet pain hiding behind tired eyes. We talked for hours. Not about loss, but about what comes after. When he left, he hugged me like I was someone who'd given him hope. Maybe I had. Maybe that's how life returns what it takes, through people who remind us that every heartbreak can still lead someone else home. Eventually, the story reached a local TV station. They asked to film inside the house. I hesitated but agreed, not for fame, but for truth. When the cameras rolled, I spoke from the same living room where my father once told me to leave. The anchor asked if I'd changed anything about the past if I could. I looked straight into the lens and said, no, because without that night, I wouldn't have found my purpose. And maybe that's what life does best. It breaks us in all the right places so light can find its way through. That night, I stood outside as the house lights glowed behind me. A beacon in the dark. My parents' car was parked nearby, my sister waving from the porch where it all began. The wind carried faint sounds of children's laughter inside. I realized something profound. Sometimes, life brings you full circle not to remind you where you came from, but to show you what you've built since. My story was never about revenge. It was about return. About finding peace in the same place I lost it. About understanding that forgiveness isn't for them, it's for the person you become after you finally let go. Years passed quietly. Seasons changed. Faces came and went, but the house stayed alive. More alive than it ever was when I was a child. Every corner carried a story now. Every wall held laughter that didn't belong to pain. I no longer saw it as my home, but our home. A place where lost souls found their footing again. Sometimes I'd sit by the window and watch the kids playing outside, their joy echoing down the street. That sound was my reward. Not money, not recognition, just the proof that something broken could still build something beautiful. My parents grew older, but they never missed a Sunday. They'd bring food, help paint, fix broken furniture, or just sit and listen to the kids' stories. My father had become softer, the kind of man who now apologized with actions instead of words. My mother laughed more than she used to. The kind of laughter that doesn't hide sadness anymore. And my sister. She became the heart of the place. Together, we'd built something none of us could have imagined that night they sent me away. A family not born by blood, but by healing. One evening after everyone had gone home, I sat in the living room surrounded by quiet. The light flickered softly on the walls, and I realized the house no longer needed me the way it once did. It had become something bigger, a legacy that would outlive all of us. I thought about the night I was thrown out, the rain, the heartbreak, the pain that used to define me, and for the first time, I felt thankful for it. Because without that storm, I would never have learned how to build shelter, not just for myself, but for others. Years later, when people spoke about the house, they didn't mention the family who once lived there. They talked about what it became. A place that never turned anyone away. A place where second chances were more than words. And every time someone asked how it all started, I'd smile and say, with a closed door. Because that's the truth. Sometimes the endings we fear most are just the beginnings in disguise. Pain opens the path. Forgiveness lights the way. And love, real love, keeps the doors open, even when the past once slammed them shut. Now, and when I walk past the house at night, I see its windows glowing softly and I feel peace. The rain doesn't hurt anymore. It just reminds me how far I've come. I built this place from the same pain that once destroyed me, and in doing so, I found my purpose. The boy who was thrown out became the man who built a home. And if there's one thing I've learned, it's this. Life doesn't always give you what you deserve, but it always gives you a choice. To close the door forever, or to open it wide enough for healing to walk back in.